everyone. Welcome to another episode of UX Pathways. And I have the honor to be joined by Mr. Andy Vitale. How are you, Andy?
I'm doing great, Mark. Thanks for having me on.
Glad to have you on the podcast. And I know we've been chatting back and forth for a while. So good to catch up with you. So for all of our viewers and listeners, could you just give us a little background on what is your role?
Yeah, so I'm currently the Executive Vice President of Design at Rocket Companies. So I lead a team of about 150 designers and researchers that are really curious and really passionate about improving the lending space. So we support Rocket Mortgage, Rocket Pro, Rocket Loans, Rocket Solar, lots of rockets. We've just kind of been diving in with the acquisition of Truebill, now Rocket Money, into some personal finance. So just trying to do what we can to help people have a better relationship with their finances and provide a great lending experience for them.
And you do some other things. I know you speak and you're a co-host of a podcast. I mean, you are out there. You're doing a lot of things that also fit into your current role as well.
Yeah, I thanks for reminding me of that. Sometimes it's easy to just fall back into the what am I doing right now? But yeah, I love to give back to a design community that's been so good to me over all of these years. So I do speak at conferences. The next one, I just did Pendo in Raleigh, Pandemonium in Raleigh, North Carolina last week. The next big one coming up is Adobe Max. I'm excited for that. It'll be my first time speaking at Max. I co-host a podcast with Lisa Welshman, who wrote a book on digital governance called Managing Chaos, called Surfacing. And we are about to launch our second season, probably late Q4 or early Q4. It's hard to tell. Hopefully we'll have everything in order. I teach online at Kent State in their master's program for UX. Like I said, this community, this design field has been so good to me over the years that I'm at that point in my career where anything that I can do to give back and make things better, I'm happy to do.
Well, we appreciate you giving back and sharing even more today. And with all that background, how did you stumble into this field?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I went to school before UX was a thing that we now know it as. It was early days of digital and still very print heavy. So I went to this college in Florida called Kaiser College. They're now Kaiser University. And the first few jobs I had were still kind of print focused. And I worked at a company that was responsible for, or they created all of the tabloids. So Sun, Star, Inquirer, Globe, all the trash mags. And when I worked there, we were the subject of the first anthrax attack in the United States. So someone had mailed a package, our photo editor opened it, he ended up passing away. And I remember getting a call to go down to the health department to meet with the FBI, the CDC, the Florida Department of Health. And around that time, I was like, I don't know if I can go back to work at this company. So I reached out to the school that I graduated from, because I had been in the field for maybe a year and a half, 2 years at that point. I was like, are there any opportunities to teach? And they were like, yeah, we have a campus. It was like an hour and a half from my house. I was like, I'll take it. It felt safe at the time. So as I started to really get involved in more of the digital side of things and doing the research, I was starting to see interaction design, information architecture, content strategy, all of these disciplines were becoming their own thing. And I was like, wow, I want to learn that so that I could teach it. So I was able to learn enough of it on my own to teach that to students and have them work on projects. But after 4 years of doing that, I was like, I really need to go out and apply that myself too. So I ended up taking a job in the field to actually go and build that. And then later on, years later, just I guess my own imposter syndrome, or maybe just because I really wanted to teach at a master's level, I went back and got my master's at Kent so I could build up that foundational knowledge that I never really had because I was self-taught, and then be able to continue to apply that and teach that as well.
Andy, I did the same exact thing. I was in the field. I started a digital agency and then went back to Kent as well. And I'm part of your fellow brethren there. I'm also teaching in that program. And I love to hear that story because there's so many out there that think, I don't know if I have what it takes. I mean, I've been doing this, But the reality is, and I've heard this from a lot of guests on the show, is you just really need to get out there and start doing the work and
Right.
applying it. That's the best way to kind of get your hands in there. And I'm wondering, for those that are watching, there are a lot that are seeking after this career. They're wondering, I really want to get in UX. I'm hearing this. Is that part of it? Is that it seems to be what everyone's trying to get into? Is it a popularity thing, or why do you think everyone is wants to get into user experience and at this time?
Yeah, I think it's funny because the comedy answer to that question is because the money is good. And I feel like, early days of design, the money wasn't great. But as we've stepped up and started to solve problems at a larger scale and had larger impact, the money that comes along with that has improved. But really, it takes a special breed of person that's focused on improving the current state, right? It's not just how we can make things better for people. We all want to do that. Everyone in the field believes like empathy is our superpower and how we can start to work with people and collaborate to solve problems. But there's also this there's a business side of it because it is a profession. It's how do you actually understand how your company or how your business, how your product makes money so that you can in turn help create solutions for people so they could use your product. It's design has become an extension of the brand, an extension of the user. It really ties the whole thing together in a way. And we've got this opportunity to really make meaningful impact and solve meaningful problems. Years ago, it was like, can you build this screen? Can you build this website? Now it's turned into hey, we've got this problem with algorithmic bias. How do we solve for that? How do we create solutions? How do we look at new and emerging technologies that we're still trying to figure out as we're building in them to make sure that we're not causing harm to people, that we're solving some social inequities, that we're actually making that impact on people's financial lives like I do, or I used to work in healthcare and having the ability to focus on how do we solve and design for quality of care. It's just the stakes are so much higher and there's just so much more involved that it becomes something that really consumes us. I remember when I first went to school for design, things like the movie credits in a scene, the opening credits, I would notice that and I'd be like, oh, that movie, those credits are terrible, or that one I'm really interested. And then it starts to go to I can't eat at this restaurant because the font is terrible. And it's you see that, you feel that, but then you evolve past that and you think how do I solve this? What are we doing here? How do I make this menu more inclusive for people? How do I make it more accessible so people that have low vision can actually order, or people that are potentially blind, how did they go and order food at this restaurant? So you really start to think about how you impact populations at scale, and then it focuses on the curiosity that you have to really want to explore and play it. It's back to when we first created the web. It's this is a place to play and explore, and then things can get out of hand. How do you utilize that for good? And that's where I'm at now. So people who really want to help solve problems, like there's no, hey, you take this course, or hey, you get this degree, or hey, you go to this boot camp and you're going to be a designer. I remember I graduated with a class of 35. I'm the only one still in the field, right? It's because you become dedicated to the profession and you really focus on how to improve, and learning happens, like you said, as you do it on the job from making mistakes. It's not about what you learn by reading an article or a book or using a particular piece of software.
I mean, you said so much there to unpack, but I agree with you. I mean, there's so many pieces there about not only the risks, the stakes are higher now than where you were, but then also as you move forward. I mean, you started with your building blocks, then you're going to move more into the science and technique, then you're going to move more into the strategy. I know there's Debbie Levitt, who is one of the guests, talked about this kind of proficiency of UX knowledge, which I really have been thinking about lately, how to explain the fact that yes, you can start off, but you have to continually learn. You got to have that growth mindset.
Right.
And I think you've touched upon a lot of that. One of the other things you started touching upon, which is my next question, is where user experience is going. And it sounds like ethics and understanding how to think about this just not in silos, but all the way across, the entire scale of the product that you're developing.
Right.
Talk about that. Where do you think UX is going to go in the future? If I'm coming in, where should someone be specializing or be thinking about what they should be doing, or will they be a magic unicorn?
Yeah, it's funny because as you start to grow and scale teams, what you realize is no matter how much you educate your partners and stakeholders on the different disciplines and the specializations of design, you start to hear them say, well, I just need a designer on this, or how many designers can we put on this? And you're like, wait a minute, you're talking about a design researcher, a market researcher, you're talking about a strategist, you're talking about a visual designer, or you're talking about a content strategist or a UX writer. And they're like, just as a designer, right? So it's like, okay, so once you realize that landscape and how you communicate that, you realize, hey, we've kind of turned into like creating these experience designers. They're a little bit more T-shaped or pie-shaped so that they can go deep in one or two areas and kind of go across in all of the different disciplines so that they can get a lot of work done, and us not having to throw together this ratio where we're like, we need 5 designers for every PM. And because companies are like, nah, we can't do that. That's crazy. So I would say understanding the core competencies that make up UX is going to be really huge. So I'm going to say, like, go pie shaped, dig into one or two things and really get a good understanding of the breadth. The other thing is we're designing in all of these emerging technologies. So like dig into that, dig into AR and VR and AI and anything that you can dig into that's the future, autonomous vehicles, Web3, like these all sound like crazy buzzwords if you're new to the field, but at the end of the day, like we're going to be building solutions in this. So it's good to understand what they're capable of doing. Of course, we talk about ethics. We want to do the right thing. It's about being responsible. It's about putting things out there into the world that you're proud of. The other thing that's really important now, though, is understanding how businesses work. Like if I can go back and get another degree, I would get an MBA. My last boss at my old company, he had an executive MBA after being a designer for years, and things he was able to teach me and pass down about strategy and how to read like a financial document. It goes such a long way when I'm building trust with my partners that they understand that I understand their business, that I know how they make money. I know what makes them profitable. I know what they need to do to be successful so that I can start to create solutions that solve the needs of our customers. So if you think about it this way, the client is the person that you potentially want to give you money, and they're not going to give you money if you don't meet their needs. So meeting their needs does great for the business, but sometimes there's a little bit of a lack of understanding. Maybe it's not shared empathy around the business's understanding of the client and how that equates to their bottom line long term. But again, I think that's been a huge transformation over the last 5 or 10 years. I don't see as much of a disconnect. So I think the only other thing when it comes to what you should get into is really that curiosity and that being able to ask why multiple times, right? Uh, Sometimes you may sit back and say, I don't want to ask this question. I might be the only one in the room that has that question. But the truth is, like, there's probably 4 or 5 people that are afraid to speak up, that once you ask that question, it helps them get that better understanding and that alignment on what needs to be understood to move that project forward. So really, I mean, there's so many things, and you don't have to be great at all of them. You can be good at one and continue to grow and add tools to your toolbox as you progress in your career. But ultimately, like, just being able to create valuable solutions and understanding what it takes and what you need to know and the relationships that you need to build and be collaborative to get things done, because we know that design UX doesn't happen in a vacuum. It's very collaborative. It's collaborative by nature. So how do we have that empathy for the people that we're solving problems with as much as we are the people that we're solving problems for?
I love it. Yeah, I mean, once again, so much in there, but I think the things that I pulled out and they're important is this idea, like you said, you're not working in silos, and also understanding that you are essentially helping the business. We're not doing this for art. This is,
Right.
we're supplying information or expertise at some level to help the business push forward because it's helping those business goals. So we've got business goals, technical constraints, and then those user needs, and keeping all the I guess the Venn diagram, the Venn diagram of UX aligned.
Yep.
And I guess from your perspective, and if someone wanted to find out more about Andy, is there a place that they should go? Is there somewhere you send people? I know you said you're speaking, you've got a podcast. Is there a central area?
I guess there is. I mean, I have a very poorly designed long time ago website, andyvitale.com, that I just never have time to update, but I do update, like, my Twitter account is there. I'm less active than I used to be. Maybe LinkedIn is the best place to reach out.
LinkedIn?
I don't know. You can find all the things about me, the podcast, all my social sites there. I'm really happy to help out any way I can. If anybody listening has any questions about how to get into this field, or they're stuck somewhere and just need like someone to kick the tires on an idea that they have, I'm really happy to help out any way that I can. Please reach out.
Excellent. Well, Andy, there was so much that you said today that I hope gives those that are thinking about getting UX, maybe you just started to get into it, or maybe even trying to move forward even further. And hopefully what you shared today will inspire others. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mark. It's great to catch up with you.
Same here. Thank you.